Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have a lot to discuss. First things first, I want to thank all the new subscribers. I know I've had a lot of people join since the episode that I shot with Clint and all the different interview guests that I've had over the past month. I really appreciate all of the new people here. I hope you enjoy all the content. For anybody that's unaware the way my content works, I do put out one of these full-length episodes. I put these out twice a week, and then you will also see some clips that I clip some of the important segments of these episodes just for people that may not have enough time to watch the entire episode. But if you do watch the full-length episode, by all means, you don't have to watch one of the clips. If you do, I absolutely do enjoy the support, though. Thank you so much. As always, if you are not currently subscribed to the channel, if you could do so, I really would appreciate it. The reason I mention this in every episode is currently 81% of the people that are watching these episodes are not subscribed. So I know you guys do enjoy the content, but if you could drop a subscribe, it really does help me out. Last thing on this note, if you hear any ads over on Apple or Spotify, that's because I am a part of the Believe Podcast Network, so anything you do to help out those sponsors does help out the show, and I really do appreciate it. I want to get right into the content. So, this episode is going to be a solo episode. You just have me for this one. We have some basketball content that I need to cover. It's at forefront, top of mind. We have one football thing that I do want to cover that I didn't get a chance to talk about with Clint, but this is going to be a mostly basketball-heavy episode, so let's lock right into the news and let's get started. Alabama has 4 guys from this last year's roster that are going to be playing on NBA rosters, or at least Summer League rosters here coming up. You have Mark Sears that signed a 2-way deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. You have Grant Nelson that signed an Exhibit 10 with the Brooklyn Nets. Cliff signed an Exhibit 10 with the Raptors. And Chris Youngblood signed a Summer League deal with the Thunder, right? Mark Sears is the only one that's guaranteed to get the spots and be able to play on both rosters, both the Milwaukee Bucks G League team and their main roster. He's the one that got the guaranteed 2-way deal with Grant and Cliff and Chris in that sense, trying to play their way onto a 2-way deal. My thought is Grant potentially does play his way into that 2-way deal. I'd be very curious to see what happens with Cliff. I think he has the possibility, but it's not a guarantee. And then with Chris Youngblood, I would expect him to potentially go more of the European route. There is a world in which he gets a deal with a G League team, but my expectation is that if he continues to play professional basketball, it's going to be more of the G League route. There actually are 4 other guys that are previous Alabama basketball grads that are also going to be playing on these Summer League rosters in addition to the 4 guys from this season. That's going to be Aaron Estrada's with the Memphis Grizzlies, Jaden Shackelford's currently with the Golden State Warriors, Kyra Lewis is with the Miami Heat, and Alex Reese is with the Philadelphia 76ers. Those are some of the guys that are going to be playing in Summer League rosters. Obviously, this is not an extensive list of the Alabama guys in the NBA, as we have Brandon Miller and Colin Sexton and Keon Ellis and others that are on some rosters and are on active rosters as we speak, but those are some of the names that are going to be playing in the Summer League. For those of you unaware, one thing I did want to mention as it relates to the NBA side of this, Brandon Miller is actually going to be teaming up with Colin Sexton after Colin Sexton got traded from the Utah Jazz to the Charlotte Hornets. So now Charlotte has 2 of Alabama's best basketball players of all time, especially in recent memory. If you're talking since 2010, definitely 2 of the best players that have come through Alabama. The best one and dones for sure. And Colin Sexton and Brandon Miller are both going to be on that Charlotte Hornets roster here this next season. So that is something that if you are an Alabama fan and are interested in the NBA at all, that is a team you absolutely are going to have to watch out for. The other things we need to talk about as it relates to basketball, these more pertain to this season. First things first, for those of you unaware, we've talked at length about the non-conference schedule. And once it's officially fully set, I will go through it in depth again and give my thoughts. But 2 of the games have been set, and that's for that Players Era tournament that you may have been aware Alabama played in the Players Era tournament last season. They unfortunately lost it to Oregon in the championship game when Latrell Wrightsell tore his Achilles. But in the first 2 rounds of that Players Era tournament this upcoming season, Alabama is going to be playing Gonzaga on Monday, November the 24th at 8:30 Central Time. and UNLV on Tuesday, November the 25th at 11 p.m. Central Time. I know that 11 o'clock Central Time is one that a lot of people are going to be very upset about, especially anybody on the East Coast, given that it's a midnight tip. Obviously, with this tournament being out in Vegas, that does influence when these games are able to tip. There are also a lot more teams in the tournament this year, so the fact that there are so many more teams, that does make it substantially more difficult to play games earlier. But for this season, that's going to be a very, very late tip. My plan is to stay up and watch that game. We will have to see when it comes around, given the fact that that's on Thanksgiving week. But Alabama's opponents are officially set with Gonzaga and UNLV. My immediate thoughts of that are, obviously, this is really, really good that Alabama gets to play a team like Gonzaga. That's a team that, consistently, when you think of Mark Few, you think of absolute consistency and just being able to get his team to the Sweet 16 over and over and over again. The type of consistency that you're looking for out of a basketball program. The first time he had not made the Sweet 16 in the last 9 seasons was last season when they played Houston, that eventually made it to the national title game. So that's really just what you're looking at, is Gonzaga is an absolutely elite team. Being able to play him and Mark Few early in the season is something that I think is really going to bolster your resume. That's going to really tell you how ready you are for high-level competition, because Gonzaga is a team that's going to stress you out. This is not the first time that they've met. Alabama has played Gonzaga a couple of times, notably in Birmingham and in Seattle, when Alabama and Gonzaga had the semi-home and semi-home, where Alabama took the game in Seattle and then Gonzaga took the game in Birmingham. But this is going to be a really, really good matchup early in the season. As far as UNLV, I don't know nearly as much about them, other than the fact that Nas Cunningham is actually going to be playing for them this season. So we will have a kind of a reunion of sorts of one of our players from this last season. So that's a little bit about the tournament that we have coming up. We don't know a ton about it. All we know as of today is those are the two matchups that are going to be taking place. The tournament is going to be laid out very similar to how it was laid out last season, in that you're only going to have 2 games starting out, and then based on wins and losses, win differential, etc. There's quite a few tiebreakers. They're going to determine who the champion is. It is a little weird how they're going to do the championship, because Alabama plays Gonzaga and Alabama plays UNLV, and then Maryland's kind of the other team in our 4-team pod. But we all kind of play each other, so it makes it very, very confusing how you're going to determine who the winner is. There's a lot of tiebreakers going to have to take place, because the likelihood of teams winning the first 2 games is actually much more likely, especially with the expanded field. I believe it's up to 18 teams this season, so that is going to be a little bit different with the way that tournament is laid out this season. The next thing I want to go through is something that I know a lot of you are very, very interested in. So wanted to talk a little bit about it, because we have a little bit of practice footage. For those of you that may not follow him currently on Twitter, Nate Goetz, My Takes 101, is kind of a stalwart, troll in the Alabama community. And he, released some practice footage of Jalil Bethea and Amari Allen. So want to play that here for everybody that may not have seen it. And then additionally want to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing in this practice footage and what I think, is of interest to me with this. So we'll play Amari Allen first, and then we'll go through Jalil Bethea. With Amari Allen, the things that jump out to me, he has really, really good athleticism. You're seeing a guy that looks comfortable with the basketball in his hand. He looks like somebody that has obviously played point at times. He looks like somebody that, is going to be able to be a guard that handles the basketball. Not that he's going to be a lead guard, but I do think that he's going to be able to be a wing and a guy that can handle the basketball and is more than comfortable at, starting the break in transition, especially if he gets the rebound. He's also going to be a guy that, definitely is not afraid to shoot the 3, right? The 2 things that kind of stand out about him is the athleticism and the ability to shoot. He has a pretty quick trigger, and then his ability to kind of elevate when he gets the ball. He has a couple of dunks in these clips, and I think that really just shows, again, his ability to elevate very quickly. And that's something that we're going to talk about with both him and Bethea, that I think is something that you have to circle when you think of some of the new guys versus what we've seen in some guards of Nate Oates' teams past. Not to say that a guy like Rylan Griffin or a guy like Aaron Estrada or Mark Sears In Mark Sears' case, a little different, but in some of those other guys' case, not to say that they couldn't dunk the basketball, but it was a situation that they just didn't, right? Even like a Rylan Griffin that was very, very athletic, he wasn't somebody that really went up with authority to try to dunk the basketball. Oftentimes you would see him go up a little weaker. And again, when you're looking at the SEC and you're looking how the defenses play in the SEC, that's something that can be a little bit of a concern, right? And the reason it can be a concern is if you go up weak in conference, there's so many fouls that get called, but then there's additionally fouls that just don't, right? In some cases, right, you play at Tennessee, it feels like a football match out there because of how much contact is being allowed. And because of that contact being allowed, think about like a Houston game last season when we played in the Players Era tournament. You have so much physicality that's happening in that game that it really just feels like a different game of basketball. And if you have a guy that's going up really weak with the basketball, oftentimes those are the ones that end up having problems, around the rim because their layups just aren't falling, right? That ends up being what you have happen. Versus when you have a guy that uses his athleticism to his advantage and goes up strong and just finishes with the dunk, that, obviously it's a little flashier, it gets the crowd into it, but additionally, it's something that's just way less likely to get bumped off guard. And if you go up with that much authority, if you're getting bumped, you're getting the foul call more often than not, right? When you're getting the layup, that's often not going to get the foul call, and that's something that is a little bit of a concern when you're talking about the way that college basketball is refereed, at least in the SEC today. Then we will move over to Jalil Bethea's practice footage. His practice footage is, again, very similar. You notice a guy that looks very, very comfortable with the basketball. He's not afraid to have the basketball in his hands. He's also not afraid to go up and finish with authority, right? That's the first thing that you see. Even though he's a guy that's listed at 6'3", 6'4", he is somebody that absolutely has that ability to finish, with authority through contact. He has really, really good hops and is a very, very athletic guard. He also has a really, really good shot. That's another thing that just kind of jumps out at me when you're looking at him. He has a really good three-point shot, and he's somebody that when we thought about him coming into the season, you thought about a guy that is going to be very similar to Aiden Holloway, where you're hoping that the five-star potential comes to shine and that shot just comes back with an ability to play in an offense like Nate Oates', right? What I'm seeing, obviously practice footage is not real game footage. I know that and I'm well aware. But what I'm seeing in this practice footage, I'm seeing somebody that looks more comfortable, right? When you look back at some of his footage at Miami, even some of the shots that he was making, it felt more forced. It didn't feel like it was in the flow of the offense. It didn't feel like he was like stepping into things. And again, this feels similar to what we talked about with Aiden Holloway last season. This feels similar to what we were talking about all last season, where it just feels like you can get a little bit more in the flow. And when you're shooting in the flow and when you have other guys that can space the floor around you, that just allows you to do much more things. The other thing that I really like about the footage is one of the last clips of the footage shows a defensive steal. And the reason I'm talking about that is what it showed to me is those instincts similar to what we saw out of like LeBaron Philon last season. The best way to think about it is like that Alabama-Auburn game last season in Auburn Arena. LeBaron Philon gets the steal, finishes with the dunk, and that ends up being one of the difference makers in that game, because if he doesn't have that steal, Mark Sears doesn't even have the ability to hit the floater to win the game, right? That's what you're seeing when you're talking about that. I'm not going to say any of the guys on our team are just going to be this insane defensive stopper that all they do is defense, 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 right? Now, do I think this team is going to be able to defend? Yes, right? I do think that this team is going to be able to defend, but I think what you're going to see is similar to a Jalil Bethea or LeBaron Philon or what we've seen out of different guys, is I think you're going to see some athletes that are able to make a break on the ball, able to be twitchy, able to, jump some passing lanes and be able to get easy runouts on the other end. And I think you potentially are going to see a team that actually does potentially well from a steals perspective, a little more than you've seen in years past. Because one of the things about how Alabama has done in some years past is we haven't always been as good at generating those steals. And I think that this season, because of the type of athletes that we're going to have out on the perimeter, I think that is something that you potentially will see. Again, I've seen it in clips with this. I've heard other things about a guy like Keaton Bristow. Obviously, I know the length of a guy like Taylor Bowen. All of these attribute to the fact that I really do think that Alabama is going to be able to potentially generate some more steals and some easy runouts on that end because of the defense that they're able to bring to the table. So that's what I wanted to talk about on the basketball side, obviously, like I said, I know it's not a ton, but here in the summer, we did have a little bit of footage that I wanted to go through because I did think it was important. And I know that the practice conversation and how this team is looking is something that people are really, really interested in and looking for. Last thing I want to talk about is Ty Simpson. And the reason I want to talk about Ty Simpson is he just finished up last week at the Manning Passing Academy. And the reason I think that this is so important to talk about is Ty Simpson versus Keelan Russell is a discussion that's been had over the past offseason, over the last year for quite a while, right? You know, there were people that talked about why was Ty Simpson not coming in over Jalen Milroe if he was so good. And I think that anyone that has that question is just unaware of the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is because of the support that Jalen Milroe had in the locker room, Ty Simpson would have had to been so much above and beyond what Jalen Milroe could do that it was just an undeniable fact that he had to be the starting quarterback. Do I think Ty Simpson's a good quarterback? Yes. Do I think that he was so much better than Jalen Milroe that he could just do that? No. Because there are things that Jalen Milroe could do with the ball in his hands that we've talked about at length that other players just couldn't do, right? And that's even Ty Simpson, right? I think he is a better passing quarterback, but Jalen Milroe was elite with the ball in his hands, especially on the ground. And I think because of that, that's why you have to look at Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe not as the same person, right? I don't need you to think that because Ty Simpson didn't come in last season when you saw Jalen Milroe struggle, meant that Ty Simpson is a bad quarterback, because I do not at all think that's the case, right? And I think that's what this Manning Academy showed some people is a lot of the things you started hearing coming out of the Manning Passing Academy is that Ty Simpson was making every throw on the field, and he potentially came out as one of the best looking college passers in the whole academy, right? That's the things that you heard out of multiple scouts, out of multiple people that were at this academy, is that Ty Simpson absolutely looked the part and could make any throw on the field, right? And that's the thing that myself and Nick Kelly has said, and Stacy Blackwood said, and Clint Lamb said. We've all said, and all the different people that I've had on the show, we've talked about that our expectation is that Ty Simpson is quarterback one because we think that he has the ability to make the throws that he is capable of, right? He can make any of the throws on the field that he needs to make. He can get it to his playmakers in space, and that he's going to be a more typical quarterback for a Ryan Grubb, Kalen DeBoer system. That's what we've said. And I think that what you've seen out of the Manning Passing Academy and what you've heard out of that Manning Passing Academy is that this is absolutely the case. Ty Simpson absolutely can make those throws, and now you're just going to be able to see now he's going to get a chance to do it, right? Because I think clearly that Manning Academy, what I think is it's put a lot of the haters to bed, right? It's put all the people to bed that said, oh, Ty Simpson's no good because he didn't come in over Milroe. We just need to have Keelan Russell go in and start. Now, do I think that Keelan Russell is an elite quarterback prospect and is going to be incredible in our system in the future? Absolutely. There's a reason why Kalen DeBoer went after him. There's a reason why everyone is so high on Keelan Russell. I think that there's things that he can do with with the football that many people just can't. However, I do also believe that Ty Simpson has the respect and the locker room support that you need to be a starting quarterback. I think that he has the ability to make those throws and be the type of quarterback that Kalen DeBoer needs in his system. I think that he has the relationship with the players, again, and that's a big thing, especially when you're talking about receivers, whether they be transfers, whether they be guys like Ryan Williams that are multi-year guys at this point, even like a Jeremy Bernard. Having those connections with those receivers and having been with them for multiple years now is a big deal, right? Oftentimes, that's when you see a quarterback that's been in a system multiple years, the timings just get better. The routes get better. They get more crisp. They know the offense. They can play off of each other a little more. Even though he wasn't your starting quarterback last season, he did come in some mop-up duties. He also obviously was practicing in that system. He was talking with Nick Sheridan. He was talking with Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, Ryan Grubb wasn't on the sideline last season, but he was talking with some of the offensive staff, with Jamarcus Shepard. He was talking with all these people, so I think that really tells you what you need to know, and I think that is the reason why Ty Simpson is your quarterback one, right? Clearly and without a doubt, he is your quarterback one, and it's a reason why, for me personally, I'm very optimistic on what he's going to be able to accomplish on the field. I know that there are some pundits that have put out that Ty Simpson is going to be, bottom half of the SEC in quarterback play. I think that those people are just crazy. Personally, I look at Ty Simpson as a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the SEC. I think that that's what he's capable of. And I think that there is a world in which he plays his way into being substantially better than that. And personally, as of the current moment, I think that Ty Simpson plays his way into the NFL draft for this upcoming season because of his size and because of his arm talent. And so then what you see is this season you have Ty Simpson play really well, make his way to the NFL draft, and then next season you have Keelan Russell come in and you kind of get the best of both worlds. You have Keelan being able to sit a year and kind of develop, and then you have Ty Simpson this season being able to show what he's capable of and then move on to the NFL draft. So personally, that's what my thought process is around this. Like I said, I'd love to know what other people's thoughts are. As always, I know this is a little bit shorter episode. I know not all of them are going to be quite as long as some of the ones that I've had with guests. But I really do appreciate the support. I appreciate all the new people. I know I've had quite a few new people join since the Clint Lamb episode and the Jordan Harper episodes. So I hope the content that I'm putting out is something that you guys are interested in. If y'all ever have any comments, questions, concerns, please throw them down in the bottom. I absolutely do read everything, and I am happy to discuss with any Alabama fans. Feel free to DM me on Twitter or whatever is easiest for you guys. But thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.